Okay, so now let's talk about making something that you see from this pattern. As you can see, this jacket right here was the inspiration for what I'm wearing. And I loved this jacket. I wasn't interested in making it out of leather, but it probably would have been nice, but I didn't have leather available, so I made it out of moleskin. But notice the lines on this jacket. This is like a princess line. I didn't want the pocket because I didn't really want to put my hands in my pocket there at my waist, so I just eliminated the pockets on mine. And so the first thing that I thought is, what is going to be the type of pattern that I'm going to get to use as a base for this? Well, here is a pattern that has a princess line jacket. And here's the collar, and there's all the things, and it looks like, yeah, that would work perfectly. But what I found out is that that seam right there is not going to work because it's got a ruffle on it, and you don't want that ruffle coming over top of the bust area in the wrong place. So that was going to not work at all. So I decided that I was going to go ahead and make this out of one of the jackets that already fit me. I love this jacket. It's just a plain, simple Chanel jacket with a fisheye dart. And so I just took this jacket, and there's my dart, and I moved the dart over. And how I knew is that this dart is actually right below the bust line. And so I just measured over how far I wanted it to be beyond the bust line, bust area, and I just measured that out, and I moved the whole entire dart over just a little bit. And then I also took a little bit less of the width of the dart because I didn't want it to fit quite so tightly in this midriff area. And so the other very important thing is take that grain line and move it over here to this side, because you don't want to cut away this pattern here and lose that grain line. So now I have this moved over. Here's my fisheye dart, and if you'll notice, here is the line that you're going to, right there, and then here is the other part. So there's your side, and here it is. And before I cut it apart, I want to go ahead and make some lines across here, because this is very important that when I meet these back up, they're going to meet. So mark those lines before you cut that apart. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my seam allowance on it. And then once I get my seam allowance on it, if I wanted a pocket on it, I could do a pocket. You've got one probably in one of your stashes that's just already in something, in some kind of jacket. Just take that and make sure it doesn't go below the hemline. It's very important that it does not go below the hemline. And then just stitch it into the seam, and then when you flip this back, you're going to stitch the whole seam all the way around, following the pocket, and the pocket will be right inside of there. One other thing I want to mention is when you're adding a seam allowance, you want to be sure that you fold this over so that that meets. And you know that that little point right there is on your jacket. If you look at jackets like this, princess line jackets, you'll see that these little tabs up there are very important, because both of these are above your seam, your actual seam line, and that gives you a little bit of a turning area that's important. Okay, now let's talk about the detail on the sleeve of this jacket. The sleeve of this jacket has some beautiful lacing, and you can see that I've put that on mine, and it's also on the top of the sleeve. Well, that's not something you're going to find in a pattern. You do not get details like that. That's put in there by the designer. And just to cut that and put that in there is not going to work, because there's not enough width in the sleeve to really make it lay nice and drape good. So this is one thing you want to pay attention to, is where the the width of that sleeve is going to be added. This is not correct. You will not put it in the side seams because it will end up hanging on the outside of the seam. And you don't want to split it apart and put it all the way up because then you widen out the entire sleeve. If you wanted to make this more wider of a sleeve, that's the way you do that. But what you want to do is take your regular sleeve that you have in your pattern and you want to make a mark to the top of where you're going to use this lacing. And you're going to stop right there, and then you're going to cut across both of those, both sides, and then you're going to split this pattern by slipping it up, and there is your fullness in your sleeve that you're going to get. And notice on this sample right here that we're going to stitch it right up here and go right along the line, and notice that there's a little more fullness at the bottom center, and that's very important. That's where I wanted all of that, and there's a little more dip to it so that when that all comes together, that lays really, really nice on your hand. I guess I've lost my other little piece, but you also now will make the facing, and the facing will lay just exactly to this this line right here. You will cut it exactly like it, except you will come up a little higher, and then you will put the right side of the facing to the right side of the fabric, stitch around it, and then put your eyelets on it, grommets, and then you're going to just turn it, and you'll have it and lace it up, and you'll have a cute jacket, right?